Jay here for Stretford, Paddock, and this is the Paper Talk. And as you can see, I'm outside Old Trafford as always, and it's getting cloudy, but there is some sunshine on the horizon, but not enough to make me take off my parka just yet. The latest news from United, or about United, is featuring Andreas Pereira. Now, the reports last night are that Pereira is in talks to leave Manchester United, that he's not happy with the fact that he isn't a first-team player anymore, and he isn't likely to become a first-team player anytime in the immediate future, following the return to the team of Paul Pogba, Bruno, the signing of Bruno, of course, and the fact that Nemanja Matic is now a regular, Fred, McTominay, all those players ahead of him in the pecking order. So the reports coming out last night that he's looking at moving, he's looking at leaving, that he's in negotiations with the club to see that happen, and he's also there's clubs in Spain and Portugal that are interested in him. Now with Pereira, the thing is, he's almost like an example of what went wrong for Ole earlier on in the season. I know that he has his critics, Pereira, and a lot of people say that he's just not good enough, but he did play a lot of games for Manchester United. I think his record this season in the league is something like 25 games. Now the problem is he's got 25 games, 1 goal and 3 assists, which isn't really good enough. And if you look at Pereira, I've often said this, and I don't mean to hammer him, because there was a time, especially when he was a youngster, I mean he's 24 now, there was a time when he was a younger player that he looked like he did have a bright future. He went on loan a couple of times abroad, did okay, and it was looking like, okay. He came back into the side, he had a good pre-season, he had 2 good pre-seasons where he sort of forced himself into the reckoning. But I've always said that I can't remember a player who's been out of form as much as Pereira, or isn't at a level good enough as like Pereira is, who's played as many games for Manchester United. I think he's played 40 games this season. Now normally when you have a player like Pereira, they'll play sort of 10, 12 games for Manchester United. They'll be a complete fringe player. Yet he's been a regular. I mean, he was a first team player for a good 6 months of this campaign, and that was probably one of the problems. I look back at some of the performances, some of the games, and I think Bournemouth was probably one that sticks in my mind. Bournemouth away, where he had even though the team was poor, he had an absolute stinker, and I think Jesse Lingard ended up coming on for him and actually did a little bit better. But Pereira's been sort of quite indicative of the problems Ole had earlier on in the season, the fact that we were relying on players like him, and it looks like he's going to get a move abroad, and it'll be one of those. I don't think too many people will be disappointed. It hasn't really worked out for him. This was a season where he needed to kick on. He's 24, like I said. He needed to show what he can do and prove that he is good enough for Manchester United, and he hasn't really done that. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, 1 goal, 3 assists in 25 games. I think those stats almost flatter him a little bit, if I'm being brutally honest. I know he has been moved around. He played in the 10, he played as a 6, he's played on the wing. Problem is, he hasn't nailed down any of those positions. I couldn't even tell you now what his best position is. Is he a 10? Probably not. Is he a 6? I don't really think he is. So, where do you play Andreas Pereira? Where is his best position? I think his best position, being brutally honest, isn't at Manchester United. But when he moves on, we wish him well, because regardless of whether you think he's good enough or not, he's a player that always puts an effort in, he always tries his hardest. I just don't think his hardest has been good enough. Now, inevitably, there's Jadon Sancho news, and the Jadon Sancho news this morning, is that Real Madrid and Barcelona are looking at him as well. This came out of the Mirror. I think this was sort of late last night. Dave McDonnell in the Mirror, who isn't completely sort of off the boil when it comes to these stories. He has had some stories before, some scoops almost that have been accurate. He's one of those journalists that a lot of the time people look at the Mirror and they go, oh, it's the Mirror. But when he writes a story, sometimes I'll look at it and think there could be something in that. Now he's saying that United are braced for a 3-way battle between Barcelona, Real Madrid and ourselves for Sancho's signature. It won't be this summer that I think he's saying that Real Madrid and Barcelona are interested in, but they could look at him. They could look at him in the future, because I think next year they're going to look at it possibly, because we know now that Jadon Sancho, there were reports earlier that Jadon Sancho's contract ran out in 2022. Michael Zorc came out the other week, or this week, earlier in the week, and said that's not the case. Sancho signed an extension last year, and his contract runs out in 2023. So obviously there's another 3 years before his contract runs out, and the thinking there is that next year Real Madrid or Barcelona could have the money for Jadon Sancho and could enter the race. And that's the problem that Manchester United have with Jadon Sancho, is if they can't get this deal done this summer, then potentially next summer there could be other clubs in for it. We spoke to Fabrizio Romano on the Tier 1 Transfer podcast yesterday, and he said that Manchester United are sort of fully focused on trying to get this deal done. That's what all the efforts are, and that the club haven't given up on him yet. They still want to sign him and believe they can sign him, but there is that sticking point of the fee. Borussia Dortmund have a player there who's under contract for another 3 years. They want around 120 million quid for him. Manchester United aren't willing to pay that much, or if they do pay it, they want to pay it in sort of longer term instalments. But Dortmund are digging their heels in, so they've reached this. I keep using the word impasse when I talk about it, because that's what we've been at for weeks now. We know United want Jadon Sancho. We know Dortmund are open to the idea of selling him for the right price. We know that Jadon Sancho wants to come here to Old Trafford. The problem is United aren't willing to pay the fee that Dortmund want, and if this is true, what Dave McDonnell is saying, Disco Dave as he's known, is saying that Barcelona and Real Madrid are also keeping an eye on Jadon Sancho. That could solidify Dortmund's position, because they may say, okay, we can dig our heels in, get another season out of a very good player, and then in next summer we could have this three-way battle for him and get roughly 100 million euros or 100 million pounds, whatever it is, for a player next season. So we're only losing out on 20 million, and we've kept him for another season, and that season he could do, he could help us get into the Champions League, or do, have a big impact on our success this season. So that's another twist in the Jadon Sancho saga. We'll have to wait and see whether that interest is real. We'll have to wait and see whether Barcelona or Real Madrid even get a chance to make a bid for Jadon Sancho, because hopefully Manchester United get the deal done this summer and that all becomes a moot point. Now, another player that we've been linked with, sort of, I've spoken about him a few times on the Paper Talk, and we've heard other people talking about him as well, is Ben Chilwell from Leicester City, the left back. Now, the reports coming out of, I think it was the Mirror again, or the Evening News as well, have been reporting it, but again, you can take it out with a bit of a pinch of salt, that Chelsea, who are in for Ben Chilwell, face competition from us. So just like we may face competition for Sancho from the likes of Barcelona and Real Madrid, Chelsea could face competition for us for the signature of Ben Chilwell. Apparently we've been targeting him. We've not sort of made a bid or anything like that, but he's a player that's on our radar, and Chelsea, who are heavily interested in him, may face competition for us. I take this with the biggest pinch of salt you can. I don't see Manchester United, I've said this before, going for Ben Chilwell. We know there has been reports of this. I think the papers in Leicester were saying that United were interested in him, but at the moment Manchester United have Luke Shaw and Brandon Williams both vying for that left-back spot. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer last summer went out and spent, 130, 120 odd million on his defence. He brought in Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he brought in Harry Maguire. We have been linked with another centre-back, I'll get to that in a minute. So do I see Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in the space of, 18 months, more or less spending 200 million or whatever it is on an entire new defence? No, I don't. I don't think left back is a problem. I don't think it's a position that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has earmarked as one that he needs to strengthen. I think he's happy with the form, or the way that Brandon Williams has emerged as a real contender for that position, and I think he's been very happy with Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw's probably getting a little bit more credit of late, because people have realised that the impact he has when he's not been in the team. People have said, actually, Luke Shaw does a good job, and he's having his best season since before he got injured. So I don't think, before he got injured in the Champions League all those years ago, I don't think that Manchester United are in for Ben Chilwell. And we know, I've said this before, Leicester City don't give players away. If you buy a player from Leicester City, as we well know when we bought Harry Maguire, you have to pay a premium, because they do have rich owners that care about the club. They're not a selling club in the sense that they just give players away. They will sell players like Riyad Mahrez, like Harry Maguire, of course, but they sell them for big money. They don't just give them away. So I don't see that one happening. I think that's just paper talk, in the sense that it's nonsense. I don't think it's going to happen at all. But keep your eye on it. We'll see if there are any developments. There could be a twist. I'm not expecting it though. Now, one player that we have been linked with is Gabriel Magalhaes. Now, according to Di Marzio, Lille have a gentleman's agreement with Napoli for the services of the defender. Now, we've been looking at him, we've been linked with him quite heavily over the last few weeks. He's a player that reportedly Ole Gunnar Solskjaer really fancies. A good young centre-back. He's having a great season at Lille. But what Di Marzio is saying there, is that Napoli have already made an agreement with Lille to have that player, to sign that player. Now, we spoke, I said earlier that we spoke to Fabrizio Romano, and he mentioned that, we were asking him about transfer stories and when, how he gets nervous and does he ever worry that something's going to change when he's reporting it. And he said one deal that was about to be done that changed was when Jorginho was at Napoli and he was going to go to Manchester City, and they had an agreement, a gentleman's agreement, almost identical to what's being claimed here Napoli have with Lille, but that changed because Chelsea wanted Jorginho and they wanted Sarri as well. So Napoli did a double deal. They said, okay, we'll do a deal with you where you take Sarri, the manager of course, and you take Jorginho as part of a double, and City, who were ready to sign him, who had been agreed, it was all done and dusted, was sort of left hanging high and dry, which, you know, no one's got much sympathy for Manchester City, have they? So a gentleman's agreement isn't set in stone. They can be broken, but that isn't what you want to hear if you fancy Gabriel Magalhaes coming to Old Trafford, because it looks like Napoli and Lille have come to some sort of arrangement. We'll just have to see how solid that arrangement is. One final one that came out this morning, just before we started recording, was that Donny van der Beek, who is at Ajax, of course, has been linked with Manchester United, has said that he's happy at Ajax. He said, if I'm at Ajax next season, you won't hear me complaining. I mean, that's not really very emphatic, is it? It's not like saying I'm not going anywhere and I'm desperate to stay, but it's a sort of positive statement you make when you're at a club. Jadon Sancho said something similar at Dortmund earlier on this week, and people are like, oh, that means he's not coming. It doesn't really mean a lot. When you're playing for someone, you've got to be positive about it. And Van der Beek, who has been linked with Manchester United, he's been talking about his being at Ajax, and he sort of said, nothing is certain yet. I am still a player of Ajax, and I am still proud to be there. I mean, that's almost meaningless, if we're being honest. We know that United are interested in Van der Beek, but I don't, again, think there's massively solid interest in him, because all our attention is on Jadon Sancho. And as I said earlier, you know, we're trying to get that deal done. There's been this impasse. It's been rumbling on for weeks now. Yes, we are looking at other players. I mentioned Magalhaes. You mentioned, you know, players like Van der Beek. There's also talk of Jack Grealish. But Pau Torres is another name that's in there. But I don't see United making any bids or going anywhere near Donny van der Beek anywhere soon. It's one to keep your eye on, though. He's making a statement. Again, we'll see whether that means he is really going to stay at Ajax. We know that you can get players from Ajax, as Manchester United have done in the past, so maybe that could happen again. This has been the Paper Talk. Don't forget, obviously, to check out all the other videos we've got on the channel at Stretford Paddock. Also, we'll have all the pre-match stuff coming up ahead of the Sevilla game. We'll also have the watch-along and the fan cams and the reaction as Manchester United take on Sevilla in the Europa League semi-final this Sunday. Starting to get a little bit windy, but, you know, hopefully it'll perk up a bit, and hopefully we'll have some developments on Jadon Sancho, because we know that is the sort of the transfer news that everyone wants to hear. We want to hear those three magic words from Romano. We want to hear him say, here we go. We're not hearing it yet, though, so we'll wait and see whether that happens anytime soon. I've been Jay. This has been Stretford Paddock Paper Talk. Don't forget to hit like, share and subscribe. Get involved in the comments as well, guys. As you always do, let us know what you think. Any stories you want to hear about, any stories you've heard as well. Thanks for watching.